It has now been a week since Donald Trump took office, and it really feels like for Democrats, our leaders aren't doing much, and if they're doing anything, they're shouting into a void. So on this episode of Concepts of a Pod, we're going to commiserate with you and share what some of our supporters from our Democratic text focus group have to say about Trump's first week.
Yeah, you guys had a lot of thoughts as we did, and these were a couple of what I thought were like the hardest hitting comments that, I don't know, they made Jordan and I both go like, wow, people are really, really angry. The first comment was, we're waiting to see what Democrats do now. FEMA for California, AI used in insane executive orders. Dems need to fight back. We've got a lot of opinions. And this was my favorite comment out of all of our most recent focus groups was, where are the Democratic leaders? Who is going to inspire defeat this man?
Yeah, no, and I think that goes back to how we opened this up, how both Shayna and I have been feeling about our leadership. But I will say I actually, just this morning, came across a great clip of Pete Buttigieg, definitely one of the future leaders of the Democratic Party who really has some of the right ideas on how to fight back. And he was talking to a group of young activists who are the next generation who are going to carry things forward. He said something that was really interesting that I want to share with you all.
We cannot be mesmerized by the worst things that we see happening. We will be inclined to react with shock by some things which are done precisely with the intent of shocking us. We need to move very quickly through the shock and condemnation into identifying what exactly has to be done. And that requires a more tactical mentality that, again, I think probably comes more naturally to people who have been in the trenches of state and local and county work than it does sometimes to leaders here in Washington.
As someone who has, for most of my career, been in the trenches of state, local, and county politics and elections, I think what Pete had to say was 100% true. I think all levels of government are incredibly important, but a lot of the little things that you care about and that you see from day to day that affect your lives is not done by the federal government. It is done by your local governments. And also, those words that Pete had were someone who's definitely vying to run for president.
Oh, yeah, no, and I couldn't agree more. Put aside the 2028 race, though. I want to focus in on the state and local stuff because that right there is why when I quit my job in national Democratic politics doing those texts and emails that so many of you had a lot to say about, and we'll get to that too. The first person I called to figure out how to do things better was Shayna, who the entire time I had been following orders to blow your phone up with those same messages you didn't like. Shayna's been knocking the doors in local elections across the country. And I mean, she would tell me about what was going on there, what she thought people were seeing that people in DC were missing. I tried my best to take it to anyone who would listen back in DC. Of course, no one would. And the more I spoke up, the less people wanted to hear from me. So now here I am. And
here we are.
Yeah, and now everyone's asking what's next and saying we don't trust Democratic leaders, and who wonders why? So
yeah. As we talked about, there was a couple of podcast episodes ago, but I know it keeps coming up, is the same people who are doing the same old playbook from 2008. It doesn't work anymore, guys. The young people are the future. We've been saying this for decades.
Yeah, and I hate to say it, but I think we can all agree that that's why Donald Trump won, because whether or not his strategy is good for our country, actually, we can just say it's not. Unfortunately, he came up with a new strategy that completely disrupted the way everything worked in Washington. The reason it succeeded was because it's straight out of reality television, which is just distract. If heat's on you, throw something out there and keep the producers going with a fire hose of new information, so they're forced to take not necessarily your side, but one of the many things you're saying. Actually, It's funny, I was having lunch with someone I know who works in news, and he said it's really hard to produce news these days because it feels like drinking from a fire hose, and they're trying to decide whether or not they're going to cover Trump launching his own cryptocurrency and making himself billions in the first week in office because he pardoned a bunch of criminals who beat up cops, and that's more important in the 8 minutes they have for their segment. So what are you going to do?
He's been throwing so much out there to distract people, to make people and news outlets choose what's important to care about. It's information sensory overload.
Yeah, it's horrible, which is why I think Pete Buttigieg made a really good point when he said that they are trying to shock and outrage us, and we can't get distracted every time because it keeps us off focus, and we need to be more tactical. So with that, I was thinking through how we do this, how we start to make sense of this fire hose of information. And I was thinking back to campaign trail, all those Venn diagrams, and I think we could actually draw a really good one here between the things Trump does to shock and outrage people and the things Trump does that are actually part of the systemic evil that we need to fight. So before we get into that, I'm going to play a very funny TikTok you sent me just summing up all of the horrible things Trump's done.
Thought it was a nice we'll just watch it. You'll see.
Yeah.
You'll understand.
We'll watch it and then we'll sort the things into our Venn diagram and come up with a strategy to fight back against this nonsense.
You think you own whatever land you land on. The earth is just a dead thing you can claim. But I know every rock and tree and creature has a life, has a spirit, has a name. You think the only people who are the people who look and think like you. But if you walk the footsteps of a stranger, you'll learn things you never knew.
I bet you guys didn't think that we were going to bring Disney princesses into this.
Yeah, we all need some music at times, and damn, that song is poignant.
Yeah, I happened to just come across my social media feed this morning, and I was like, oh my God, this is perfect. I think it also fits right in with that sensory, information overload, that so many things happened that this creator was able to put an executive order with every phrase within this part of this song.
Yeah.
And Colors of the Wind is a very classic Disney song that so many people know, but I don't think, a lot of us watched it when we were little and as kids. You don't quite understand what it means. And I think it rings so true and close to home, especially after this first week of 2.0 Trump presidency.
Yeah, so many of those movies, but we'll do another podcast on nostalgia and reinterpreting it to fight for a better future. That's a side niche.
That is a whole separate thing.
We should get back to our Venn diagram because that TikTok, as great as it was, didn't even cover all of the things that he's done. And we're not even going to be able to cover all of them on this podcast. And I'm sure between the time we record this and the time we release it, there will be another million things that need to fit in. So what we're going to do here is give you all a framework for how you can look at any breaking news thing or text message about how you'd need to donate to fight back and say, is this really something we need to worry about? Or is this just something that Trump is doing to outrage and distract us from the larger systemic evils of Republican politics? So
yeah, we've got just a reminder, we've got the two circles of the Venn diagram, the outrage, nothing burgers, and then like the actual systematic, predictable evil.
And then, of course, we'll get to the things in the middle, which are the things that are just so shocking, outrageous, and bad that they need to be things we ask every Republican member of Congress about literally every time they get a camera in their face. But we'll get to those.
Yeah.
I want to start, though, with the nothing burgers and just kind of get them out of the way, because as horrible as some of these things Trump's doing are, they really are just designed to throw us off our game, and we just don't have the luxury of the time. The first ones here are the ones that this TikTok started with, the renaming of Mount Denali and like the Gulf of America. I put the thing about buying Greenland in here too, because it's stuff he says at random times to get a bunch of outrage on social media that there's no way it'll ever happen. And if we see any actual, like, I don't know, formal government documents of the type that
Then we'll
even if
move it
they're
over.
AI generated, even if they ask ChatGPT to generate something, which another one horrible that they're doing, but like
Yeah, once it actually becomes like a written piece of legislation, we'll start to worry about a little more.
One more I want to put in there too is actually this one. You might say, "Hey, wait a second, there's some harm here," but if you think about the strategy of how this was pulled, you realize that this was just frickin' rage bait. Was nominating Matt Gaetz for Attorney General, which we freaked out about before Trump was even president, and wasted a lot of the time we still had in the White House making a media circus about that when Democrats could have controlled the narrative. But of course they were going to pull him. Of course he wasn't going to get confirmed. Of course he was going to end up with a right-wing talk show. Exactly how TV producer Donald Trump played it out. We called him a fascist when what we should have been saying before the election was, do we really want our country to be a reality show for 4 years? Because when it's a reality show, it's a distraction from the second category on this Venn diagram, which are the things that are just despicably evil that, whether or not they're popular, Republicans have wanted to do them since before Trump came around, and they hitched their wagon to him because they saw him as a way to get this stuff done. And that's stuff like the mass deportations, the immigration stuff, LGBTQ rights, trans bathroom debates. Now they've expanded it to passports and God knows what else. And they're doing it for attention. This is deep-seated hate that is really hurting people and is not, like, that's not Trump's game, that's Republican game, and it's just been Trumpified. And we need to remember to call out the other legislators who don't have Trump's power, who are complicit in that, like the Nancy Maces of the world.
Yeah. The thing too is, like, for how we decide to separate all these issues in the Venn diagram is also based off of what Trump and Republicans did during his first term.
I think we could have used this Venn diagram the first time too, because even the first time there was a lot of rage bait stuff he did. A lot of stuff we fell for, by the way, that really didn't matter.
We totally could have used this the first time. It rings more true this time because we know he's actually going to do it.
Yeah, no, we also just need to separate the things that fly under the radar as he does his more shocking, like, Mount Denali thing, or let's go invade the Panama Canal this week.
We're going to buy Canada.
Every time one of those Mount Denali nothing burgers comes up, keep a close eye on what the rest of his underlings are doing behind the scenes, because you'll probably find them doing one of these more systemic things, and they're using the nothing burgers to flood the zone.
Yeah, and I want to make a quick note about, like, what we're claiming as nothing burgers, and, like, I know that the Gulf of Mexico and, like, renaming Mount Denali, there's a lot of historical significance and importance to the names, especially like Mount Denali and indigenously named pieces of land. We're not saying that's not important. We're saying compare, naming something versus, like, taking away rights of people. That's how we're splitting up this Venn diagram. I just wanted to put that quick note in there.
Oh, 100%. We measure in terms of human impact and whether or not it's going to be able to be reversed, because somebody else could just change the name back.
And
but
I think that
does
goes
bring us to
the middle.
Yes, the middle of our Venn diagram, where really I think Democrats would do well to spend the most of their time. These are the things that are shocking, outrageous, and also are just devastatingly bad and in many ways irreversible, and the consequences of which we'll only begin to be able to understand. And I put, first off, pulling out of the World Health Organization in this category, because with bird flu, who knows what's going to happen with that, because I can't even find straight information, which we're not epidemiologists, so we're not going to try to present any. But doesn't that scare you?
Yeah, the other thing I saw too was that, you know how you'll see on the news things about recalls on food and drugs from the FDA? Trump also halted communications between the White House and the FDA. So anytime there's, like, you see recalls, like, on cucumbers or eggs or certain medicine, I started following a couple doctors on TikTok. You're not going to see that information anymore.
Wait, FDA recalls were included in that blackout? Yeah. Are you sure about that?
Yep, Trump said that he wants to stop communication between the government and the FDA.
I know I know the CDC was in that. If the FDA is in that too, that is even
Yep.
scarier than I thought. But
Yep. So any
Yeah.
recalls on food, make sure you go look that stuff up at least once a week, because you're not going to hear about it anymore.
Jesus, that's scary. And
people are going to
even
start getting sick. Yeah.
ordering the CDC on a communications blackout, that's terrifying. Like, bringing back my 2020 trauma. But then there's one that's even scarier than that. Those pardons for the January 6th rioters. I mean, I lived in DC on January 6th. I knew people in the Capitol, and they saw those horribly violent acts. Couldn't even imagine what those police officers are feeling. I don't know do you see the Fraternal Order of Police actually rescinded their endorsement of Trump because of those pardons?
Yeah, no, I did. There also, I saw there was specifically one woman who was a rioter. She was like, I'm rejecting his pardon because I broke the law. But I
Really?
Yeah, she's like, I'm rejecting his pardon. I broke the law. Like, I stormed the Capitol. And it's really interesting to see the people who actually care about law and order, who, even though this woman is still a Trump supporter, I have a little bit more respect for her, because she's like, I did break the law and I'm fighting for better law and order.
Yeah,
that's some respect there. But I remember on January 6th, I was celebrating some of the remote work I had done to help get Ossoff and Warnock elected. And I was sitting in my bedroom watching a Zoom. I went to the bathroom, came back 30 seconds later, and CNN had switched to what was going on January 6th. And I remember I texted you. You were the first person I texted. I was like, are you okay? Are you safe? And all the other people I knew working on the Hill, I was texting them like, are you safe? And I know their phones are probably being blown up, but I was so freaked out. And anyways, I know all of us were.
Yeah. No, I was lucky. I was working remotely too, and I was actually with a firm that was working on one of those Georgia races, and I was watching on CNN to see them call those results, and I watched it switch very quickly from the stuff inside the Capitol to stuff outside. I'm like, why are they looking outside the Capitol? And then I see, oh my God, they're storming the Capitol. And fortunately, my apartment was far enough away, but wow, was that scary. And
yeah.
Now these guys who beat up cops are not only back on the street, but now there's a signal to those Proud Boys, as Trump said in that debate.
Proud Boys, stand back and stand by.
And now they know if Trump doesn't like someone and says on TV, we don't like these people, and a mob goes after them, they don't have to worry about going to jail because they'll get a pardon. So
yep, or people
be scared if you oppose Trump.
Also, just on that same vein, because as someone who lives in Chicago, this was on the news. The Secret Service decided to come and try to raid an elementary school or a middle school because an 11-year-old posted anti-Trump rhetoric online. An 11-year-old.
I saw that story. What did he post? I couldn't find it anywhere. Do you know?
I couldn't find what he posted, but Secret Service decided to come to a children's school, in Chicago because an 11-year-old posted some stupid shit online.
That's scary. And I saw in a similar vein, and I know we talked about the Luigi Mangione thing when it was breaking in the news, but I saw recently that apparently law enforcement has been compiling a database of people who posted in support of him as terrorist sympathizers, which is really scary at a time when the billionaires who control all of the social media networks on which these people were posting were at Trump's inauguration. And that
Can you actually insert that photo of all of the billionaires that are in front of all of Trump's cabinet picks at inauguration? I think that is telling.
The photo of the inauguration. And it's interesting, too, because I was fortunate enough to have family plans in Los Angeles the weekend of the inauguration. So I was out of town, got to see family, make sure everyone was okay. And coming back into D.C. the day after the inauguration was really interesting because all those Trump supporters were at the airport leaving after many of them dropped their life savings to come see this historic event that then got canceled because Trump was supposedly worried about the cold. I think it was about his crowd size, but Well, neither here nor there. And all of the billionaires got their seats, but the masses were left out in the cold. And I think that's a very interesting sign of the times, because it's really a good metaphor for the billionaire club that is forming in our government right now. And the fact that it's so tied to social media is why it scares me more than any other corporate influence on government that's ever come before. Because we all think that we are democratized in social media, that anyone can post and go viral. But do we really know who controls what goes viral and what doesn't?
Yeah, it's all about free speech and taking away censorship. But if you didn't
Free
know,
speech for who, though?
Yeah, well, I know that we're going to talk about this in the future because we're still gathering information about it, but just a little sprinkling. Anything about women's reproductive health care and abortion rights and women's rights is being censored on Meta and on TikTok. When you mention certain buzzwords, that gets censored, and God knows what's being censored on Twitter right now. Like I said, we want to gather all that information. We're going to do a whole thing on that, but just to give you a sprinkling, the next time you're scrolling through Instagram and you see something that's blurred out, click watch or look at the photo. Guarantee you it's something about women's healthcare rights.
Yeah, and even more than that, though, in TikTok, I think is especially insidious. First of all, let's remember the fact that they pulled a stunt where they faked a shutdown blaming Biden only to say Trump saved it. But at the same time, I've actually been trying to post a lot more of our content on TikTok to reach a younger audience with some more nuanced political views. And what's interesting is I see a lot of videos that are similar to what I post, but then when I post, I get about 300 to 500 views. People start to engage, and then it just cuts off. And meanwhile, I see things that are a lot more radical that are getting a lot more views, and the things I watch that I interact with that I like more of, that I'm signaling to the algorithm I want to see more of, don't get as many views. I don't know what's going on there. I don't think we can say for certain that there's a direct correlation, but there's definitely there's something weird going on. And then something else weird, which I think should be at minimum front page online news, if not warrant coverage on cable news, but you're never going to see anything about this. I actually saw a video this morning that Hope Walls, Tim Walls' daughter, posted that scared the living daylights out of me on TikTok.
This one person comments on every single one of my posts and leaves disgusting, vile, horrible comments. And today I decided to respond, and all I said was that they lack understanding and critical thinking skills, and that I'll pray for them. And it got removed for community, violating the community guidelines, and now I have a warning on my account. So that's where TikTok's going. So yeah, again, the systems are not set up for us right now. So we just have to remember that and work around it, I guess. So dumb.
Yeah. Given that she's a pretty well-known public figure.
I actually had that happen to me a couple of weeks ago, and I had posted a video. I don't even remember what it was about. And people were really upset because the information I had put in the TikTok, the moment I posted it, more update information had come out, and I hadn't made an update video to correct what I had said, and people were really mad at me. And I put, in the comments, I was like, instead of being upset at me, go donate to this organization or go follow this page for up-to-date information every second. And TikTok gave me a warning on my account and kept removing the comment of me saying, instead of fighting me, go do something good. And people were commenting awful things on my video, and eventually the video got flagged and removed.
Wait, that's so weird. I thought
it's not just large creators, it's smaller ones. It's the people who are doing smaller stuff too. They're more on top of that because they don't want you to grow big.
God,
so they do control who goes viral. But anyways,
I hope that's not true. Can't believe it's not, though. In any event, now we are in a media environment where Donald Trump is flooding the zone with shocking nonsense, actual evil, and evil, shocking nonsense, and mainstream media ratings are down pretty significantly. People just aren't watching the news, and it just begs the question, what do we do?
Yeah.
And a couple of our focus group respondents just hammer home the totally understandable frustration that I saw a lot on some of the recent focus groups we've been sending that I want to address head on, because I feel that if we are going to do this, we owe you that explanation. The two comments that I think sum this concern up particularly well. Dems are very good at asking for money. I don't see them as very effective in other things. And one I really found interesting. You sent me hundreds of texts and emails about getting rid of the postmaster DeJoy. You said that we got a majority on the board and we're going to fire him. I gave you money every time. You didn't fire him, therefore no more money.
Something that I want to remind people, because I saw this trend through not just this focus group, but through every focus group that we've done, is that we, New Digital Now, we are not the Democratic Party. I know both of us have applied and or have worked with somewhere within the Democratic Party on a national level. They don't want our ideas. And like, we are doing what we can to try and get, you know, thoughts from all of you to, you know, put on our platform that we are building that hopefully the Democratic Party will notice. But like, we're not the Democratic Party. We wish we were. We would fix a lot of things, but we're not.
And if you support us, we'll be able to do more good in the party. And it's so funny as we're talking about this, I just got a scammy text message that said, your zip code post office closes. Need 587 more signatures before midnight to save the post office. And
That's funny.
talk about this. I kid you not, that came in as you were reading the DeJoy thing.
That's
And
wild.
it makes me laugh because the fact that somebody in our focus group brought up Postmaster DeJoy, which New Digital Now's text messages have not mentioned Postmaster DeJoy once. And
Yeah.
you may or may not know that those 60 text messages you get a day that so many people are complaining about, they're not all coming from the same place. Like when New Digital Now sends messages, that's me as our digital and fundraising director, gathering the information that we put together for this podcast. We ask you for money very politely. We don't say that we'll fire somebody if you donate, because we can't do that.
You never have to donate to us either. We make that super clear, but like, we don't even know where some of them come from. But like, but just also like,
Yeah.
I know that people are angry about Postmaster DeJoy, but like,
No.
we can't fire him.
There's more to it than that, though, because we're very transparent. When we ask you for money, you are investing that money in this platform that we are building to get your voices to the center of democratic conversation. And we're a grassroots movement. We can't do it without you. We don't lie about that. We don't say we're the official party, but there are a lot of Democratic groups. Some of them actually do decent work. Some of them are just straight up scammers that hire these digital fundraising firms to send those messages. And I want to go back to Louis DeJoy because I got my start in politics at one of those firms. And the reason I'm now doing this work and the reason I use these text focus groups to build something real is because it made me sick for 2 years asking people like this to give us money because it would get Louis DeJoy fired. And our bosses just told us to keep doing it because it was raising boatloads of money. And at what cost? Because now we have a Democratic donor who thought they were giving their hard-earned money to get stuff done that was lining God knows whose pocket, and now they don't want to donate to the party anymore because we couldn't do this thing that some random fundraiser gaslit them into thinking was possible.
Yeah.
That just makes me sick.
It's just so sad seeing like all these firms that are claiming that they're, you know, for Democrats, and they're just lying to people about basic things about how this works. Louis DeJoy was appointed to, I don't remember how long the term was. There is nothing that us as people can do. There's nothing that Democratic firms can do. That's something that like Congress and the president has to do.
That's only the beginning of the problem, though, because the bigger issue is a lot of people ask, why don't Democrats have a counter to right-wing media? Why don't we have a way to channel our supporters? And the reason is because instead of being strategic and tactical about what messages we send to our people, we blow up our supporters' phones 10, 15, 20, even 60 times a day with these ridiculous fundraising texts, and we decide what messages to send based on which ones are raising the most money. So the reason we're talking about Louis DeJoy is because these fundraisers have scared our audiences into thinking that the post office is going to go away, and so they give more money. And God, I even saw a story on CNN that the reason some of these messages do so well is because the people clicking on them have dementia and didn't realize they already donated, which is also why in every message we send, if you've already donated to us, first, thank you. We couldn't do what we do without you. And
Yes, thank you.
the reason we ask for money is because we don't want to be influenced by big special interests who want to censor what you have to say. And in order for your voice to truly be your voice, it has to be funded by you.
Yeah, and one of the
But-
things we're super proud of is that our average donation is like $14 and some change. And it's been like that since we've started, which has been so great.
Yeah, and at the same time, we mention in every message, we thank donors for donating so that you know you've already donated, and we know you've already donated. And even if you don't want to give more, we still want your input on the focus group. Like, hit no thanks, I don't want to donate today. We give you the option. We make it super easy, first because for the people who can continue to donate, we also give you to those repeat donors who really are the lifeblood of what we do. But also, part of what we're doing is we're building the technology to make it easier for down ballot local candidates to raise more money. And what you're using here is a test of our new technology, because it's clear that TikTok isn't going to help us. Facebook, Meta, they're helping Trump. So Democrats need something fresh, and we're back to the drawing board. I'm back to coding, and your money is allowing us to invest time, resources, and real technology in building that new media future, a place for all Democrats to come. Everyone asks why Kamala didn't go on Joe Rogan, but the other question is, why didn't Kamala have a place to just come talk about what Democrats care about, what we care about? Because it's not just about what the right-wing base cares about. It shouldn't just be what the young men care about. It's what do the people who support Kamala care about? We didn't ask about that. We just asked for $5, $10, $15. So
Yeah, everything that you donate, it's helping build this technology. We have some exciting ships that are going to set sail soon that we're excited to talk to you about.
yeah, and it all starts with concepts of a pod, which, as you saw on last week's episode, we had our first guest, Shayna's friend Adam, who is an expert in all things TikTok and going viral, and he gave some really good advice on what Democrats can do to break out of our own social media echo chambers. And we're going to be having on more guests from the left, have some hopefully elected officials, which the more you like, share, and subscribe, the more likely your Democratic leaders will want to come on this podcast and answer your questions. Because if we have a guest that you're going to know, you bet we're going to text you first and ask you what questions you have for them, because this is all built thanks to you. So if you like what you're hearing, link down in the description to answer our next focus group. We're not going to touch on this. We're not going to make an endorsement, but the DNC is having their chair election coming up, so we want to know if you all have been following that. So
yeah,
click to
let us
respond.
know your opinions on that. We will definitely talk about it, but not this week. I know that both of us are still reading and learning about everything about who's running for DNC chair, but we want to know your opinion so that we can talk about it.
Of course, yes. And I will say we did have one comment in the focus group who said that Wisconsin Democratic Party Chair Ben Wickler should be the next DNC chair. But again, that is the endorsement of one focus group member, and we do not want to put our thumb on the scales there. But
Yeah, and we always want to make sure that we are as informed as we can be when we record these episodes and talk about it. So that's something we're going to look into.
yeah, and what we want to know more than that, because I personally haven't seen nearly enough media coverage of it. And
Same.
the reason I bring this up before we get informed on that, because I imagine someone would ask, why would you even bring it up if you're not informed on it? But I want to know how informed you all are on it before you go look it up, because I think it'll speak a lot to where Democrats are in the media environment and how much work we have to do to kind of get to the prominence that Trump and his Republicans have. If you like what you're hearing and want to be part of the conversation, click in the link below. Like, share, subscribe, and we will see you next time.
We'll see you next time.